Hey man, where are you right now?
All right, so I'm in Portugal, the beautiful Portugal right now, in Ericeira. It's like a little fishers village, a little bit above Lisbon, and I'm at like a co-working space. It's really perfect to focus on what you want to do. The weather is not so great today, but yeah, and overall the temperature is great, and it's just a way to escape the upcoming winter and autumn. I guess that's kind of usual pattern.
Yeah, that's what you try to do, right? Travel the world while working and escaping the Dutch weather here.
Yeah, exactly. And then sometimes going there because Amsterdam, honestly, is quite awesome. So there's a lot to love there as
True,
well. That's for sure.
true. Okay, hey, we have a big episode in the planning right now,
That's
planned,
true.
and we were aiming to talk about blockchain a little bit and Bitcoin and related concepts, um, because as not everyone might know, you are actually the CTO of a crypto exchange. And we have got a lot of questions lately from our direct peers who are not really into crypto that much,
Hmm.
that they would love to hear a little bit more what blockchain is, what crypto is. And yeah, what's a better place to start right here on our new podcast?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's funny, right? So we record this podcast and it's about like life related stuff. Stoicism is a reason when we did, and meditation, and you name it. But on the side, we actually we have a full time job that is focused on something that is quite unrelated to what we do in the podcast. So you have a microdosing business, and you run an agency, and I'm the CTO of a crypto broker, crypto exchange.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I've been in this for a few years, and it would be really cool to just like get some, take the systematic mastery perspective on blockchain and mastering that, the aspect of where our economy is going. And I think we can do more episodes on economical stuff in general, but this will be a really cool start of a series.
yeah. It's crazy, right? That we are both into self mastery a lot with this podcast, and that we're actually on the side, yeah, running our own business. Like you just said, I have a microdosing business, and you are CTO of a crypto exchange. So it's cool to dive a bit more into that. Like we can do a special about microdosing and psychedelics later on, but for now, I think the focus should be on crypto.
Yeah.
So maybe you just yeah, maybe you can just a little bit elaborate on what you do, what a CTO is, and what your daily job entails.
Yeah, sure. Um, right. So I'll first like give a short like highlight of what Big Bucks Crypto actually is, and then what I'm doing there every day. Um, So BUX Crypto is part of BUX, and BUX is a really like neo broker, as you call that, in the European Union. And they offer a few apps. One of them is BUX X, where you can trade in CFDs. You can look up what that is. It's a different episode on its own to give a lot of background about that. And then they have an app that is called BUX Zero, which is to really trade stocks. Um, and there's also BUX Crypto, and that is where I'm the CTO of. And the path towards BUX Crypto was one of the well, I think the crypto craze, we can call that, at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. We did an ICO, and the project was called Blockport. At that time, I was also the co-founder and CTO. And eventually, we ended up stopping with that in 2019. And after more or less a break of half a year, a little bit more, we got acquired by BUX. And that's where we're running now, the same software, but under the BUX brand. We have our own token, and we'll get into what a token is exactly in a couple of minutes, I think. But so that's BUX Crypto. And then my role is basically mm, to do everything technical, and it also, in CTO, typically think about the future, you think about the security, you think about the people you hire, you think about the culture, about the uptime, about risk. You think a lot about risk, and there is definitely quite a lot of risk involved in trading and crypto in general. So that's basically my day-to-day job. I'm used to it taking a little bit more than the typical day-to-day job, but I guess that's the same for both of us. It's kind of the entrepreneurial mindset. So that's what I do, more or less. I do
Cool.
code, and I also don't code. It's like a 50-50 thing. Sometimes a little bit more coding.
All right. So okay, there's all already a lot to unpack there. Some technical terms thrown in, ICO, token, more stuff. I think it's
Let's
good
go.
to set an intention for this episode, and that is that we aim to provide a new series here on YouTube on our channel, based solely on certain topics, in this case, blockchain and crypto. And this first episode, we really should use as an introduction episode. So to explain a little bit these concepts that we will be using, and it should be a good starting point for people that are new to the space, that want to learn about blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin and those things. They can start here, and then in the further episodes, we will elaborate more on the specific projects or concepts that we talk about.
Yeah, definitely true.
So I think this we should keep this in mind, that if you're already familiar with crypto and blockchain, then you can skip this episode, because this will be familiar knowledge for you or to you. And I will go into this episode. We've discussed this earlier, this concept of a beginner's mind, Zen mind, beginner's mind. It was actually your book that you recommended it. I will try to be as new to this scene as possible. I will act like I don't know stuff, and I will ask anything that I want to know, because actually there is also a lot of stuff I don't know yet. And of course, you're dealing with these concepts every day. I can learn a lot here. And to come back to that, I liked a quote I saw in a movie last week from the movie Margin Call. I am not sure if you've seen it.
I haven't. No.
It's about the crisis in 2008 and how that goes within Lehman. And then the CEO walks in and he says, "I want you to talk to me like I'm a small child or a golden retriever." So this is the mindset I want to go in, like use simple terms for me, like so that everybody can get along, and that we can really get a good fundament here for the next episodes.
All right, let's go golden retriever mode. See if we can do that. Whenever I name something, that like that is just too much, because I have that tendency every now and then, especially if you're under the curse of knowledge, so you're not aware of what other people might not know. Then just halt me and give me a sign, and then I'll try to unpack even more, because that's really important, because we really want to make sure that everyone gets it, and really also gets why we believe in this, right? Because it's exactly. Also it's part of systematic mastery. It's not just to explain Bitcoin and blockchain.
No, it's mastering everything in life, and also the concepts that we are dealing with on a daily basis, so we can adapt better to the world that's happening or unfolding around us. So yeah, sounds like a plan. I'm really excited to do this, because I think this is going to be a really deep episode, deep dive into a lot of new things, also for me. And I think we should just get into it. And there is a little bit of a structure I want to keep during this episode. We need to dive into technicals at first. I don't want to go in there in too much depth, but just briefly, so that we can get the technical concepts behind blockchain, because it's quite important, I think, to address those, as this is a fundamental revolution in technology, I would say. I'm not sure if you agree with that, but that is my view. And I think that people that want to learn more, they have to understand the technicals. And after that, we can discuss more the specific projects like Bitcoin, for example, or Ethereum. And after that, I also want to talk a bit more about the implications we see in our daily lives, thanks to blockchain. And maybe to finish, it would be great to get your view on a few cool concepts or projects that are being developed right now, because I'm trying to do some research myself, but of course you have a more advanced perspective on this, so it would be really cool to dive into that.
So I'm happy to do that. You lead the way, so you just decide whatever you want to know. And
yeah, great. So I just want to start with the first topic, technicals. What is blockchain, Zowie?
All right, how much time do you have? All right, so a blockchain, in essence, first of all, I think what's important to mention is that when we talk about it being a technical revolution, I think I do agree. However, it's not necessarily the technology itself that is that much of a revolution. So there's two kind of underlying concepts of a blockchain that we want to touch upon, I think. And we have on the one hand, the fact that it's what people call an immutable ledger. So from finance, we kind of know the idea of a ledger. It's just more or less a list of transactions, right? So they have a list of the state of your funds. But let's call it like this. So you keep your own bookkeeping. That's more or less a ledger. It's like a list of in and outgoing transactions, and then at the end you kind of want to read zero because every in and outgoing transaction is being matched. So in bookkeeping, you have certain methods for this, and this is kind of what they do, but it's immutable. So in the sense of a blockchain, what is quite important is that we cannot change history, right? So I pay you money. It would kind of suck if you can then a couple of months later say, oh no, you didn't pay me money, and then the ledger reflects that I actually did not pay you money because it's erased from history. That's something we don't want. And usually banks are responsible for this. And so this is where the second part comes in, because we have now on the one hand, we have the immutable ledger. So we have a list of transactions and no one can change this, right? So I'll explain a little bit how this works in a bit. And then we have on the other hand, we have decentralization. So the fact that when we're talking about a blockchain, there's actually not a central entity responsible for maintaining that ledger, right? So immutable ledgers, or like the concept of immutability, to have like this more or less this list of whatever it is, transactions, or a good example is BitTorrent. I think we've all had or known people that downloaded movies from the internet and they used some kind of torrenting app and website, the Pirate Bay and stuff like this. This works also in a similar fashion to what the immutability is in a blockchain. So when you download a movie, when you're using BitTorrent, this movie is kind of split up in a lot of small parts. And then all the users that are in the network that also have that movie, right? So we're talking about Margin Call. Okay, so you want to download Margin Call. There are thousands of people that have this movie as well. And on their computer, it's also split up in really, really small pieces. And when you download this movie, you connect to all these people or part of these people individually, and they send you a small piece. And this is how torrent downloading peer-to-peer. So you're a peer, and there's someone maybe a couple of houses further or in another country, and that's another peer. And you connect to them and you download the movie from them. And this is quite different from how we do it with Netflix, right? Because you go to Netflix and you download directly from them, right? So what you can already see here is that in a peer-to-peer situation, you don't have a central anything. There's not Netflix. There's literally just only people that also have the movie, right? And this is also what a blockchain kind of does. And you might wonder when you're thinking about the movie concept, okay, so great, I get a piece of the movie, but how does my computer know where this piece of the movie actually fits in? And how does my computer know when the movie is complete, when I have all the pieces?
Yeah, indeed.
Right, because you see a progress bar. How does it know this? And this is where this this kind of technology comes in, is every piece refers to another piece. And this piece that it refers to is, in the case of blockchain, is the piece before it, right? So you have to imagine you get the first, there's some piece of the movie that you might get right now or you might get it later. Yes. And this is the actual start of the movie. And then you get another piece, maybe that's the first piece you actually get when you start downloading, but that refers to the first piece of the movie, right? So you get one piece, and that's piece number 2, and it refers to piece number 1, but you don't have piece number 1 yet. And later you receive piece number 1. So like, oh, okay, cool, piece number 1 is here, piece number 2 here, and you continue. So and you can imagine that this forms a chain. This is kind of the idea of why it's a chain. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really good. And right, so that's concept number 1. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, I get it so far. Makes sense.
Right, cool. So then we have decentralization, and this is where the innovation, I would say, of Bitcoin kind of comes in. So when we talk about the fact that we have a peer-to-peer network, it's that on its own is quite clear. We download from other people, right? However, what if someone in that, in the movie downloading context, what if someone says, I actually want to fake one piece of the movie. I want to I want thousands of people to watch this movie, and when they are at minute number 45, I want them to see my ad. I'm just going to push it in there. I'm going to make sure that people download it. How do you prevent something like this? Because this is when you have a bad actor on the network, right? Because people don't want to watch that ad at minute number 45. They just want to watch the movie. So you want to kind of make sure that the integrity of the movie is still there when people download. And I think this is an important piece to highlight. There's been, in the BitTorrent world, there has been a solution for this already. I won't touch upon exactly that because now this is the point where we have to make the switch to what a blockchain actually is. So we're going to leave the analogy of a movie and we're going to go to blockchain, but it's the same problem. So we have transactions now instead of pieces of the movie. And there could be a bad actor, someone that wants to put a transaction in there that didn't actually happen. They want to change the view of the world.
Why would they do that?
Because, for example, they want to take your money, or they want to give money to someone they know. There could be a myriad of reasons why someone would want to change the financial history. I mean, that's kind of, that's kind of the essence of money, is that there's a limited amount, right? So there's a limited amount, so that means that people compete to get it.
Yeah, okay.
Because they all need it. That's kind of how the market works. So in a blockchain, you want to make sure that you're not, especially when you're talking about financial transactions, because in a movie, you can imagine that this might still, it's fine if you get this piece of the movie and later you figure out that it's in there. But in blockchain, it's really, 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 really not good. Or in the financial world, if you suddenly have a transaction that doesn't belong there. And how do you make sure that when there is a bad actor, this single person or maybe small group of people compared to the whole network cannot influence the actual state of the blockchain? Well, this is where Bitcoin really was innovative, because this is where you get to something called Byzantine fault tolerance. And this is a big term.
Okay, yeah.
And you can look up exactly what it means. There are a ton of YouTube videos. Right. So there's been a ton of research already on this specific problem. And what it more or less comes down to is that when you imagine that, and this is why it's called Byzantine, you have the Byzantine generals. This is a historical story. And they are attacking a city. The issue is they're with quite a lot of people. They're imagine you have 5 generals, 5 really important people. How do they make sure, even though they're absolutely not connected to each other, so they don't have direct communication lines, how do you make sure that they attack at the same time? And this is kind of where blockchain or Bitcoin specifically found a solution for, is because you have to imagine, General 1 says, okay, I'm going to attack at 8 a.m. And they have to send a messenger to General 2. And they also have to send a message to General 3 and 4 and 5 and so on. But then how does General 1 know that General 2 actually received the message? They don't. So General 1 thinks, okay, I'm going to attack at 8 a.m. General 2 knows that General 1 wants to attack at 8 a.m.
Will attack it, yeah.
But General 1 does not know that General 2 knows.
There's no confirmation.
And this is problematic. This is really problematic because if they don't attack all at the same time, they lose, right? So this is like, this is a case of life and death. And we have to take this appropriately seriously. And in the financial world, we have to do something similar because it could actually be the case of life and death if transactions go through or not. So when we move ahead with the amount of transactions we process and we say, okay, this is the state of the world. These are the transactions that we process. We need to actually make sure that everyone agrees and knows about this, and that there's not a couple of people that either are not aware or they think something completely different. Because then what you get is you get a network that doesn't agree, and then you don't get something we call consensus. Mm. And this is the world of consensus protocols. They try to solve this problem called the Byzantine generals problem.
How is that solved?
Right. So we don't want to make it too complicated. So I think we'll touch upon the exact details in another episode. I think that's a good point because it's a big field of research and it's complicated to explain without giving a lot of background information, and it's a little bit computer sciencey. So we'll have to squash that down into something that is easily digestible in a separate episode. What it more or less comes down to is that in the world of blockchain, they solve this problem by introducing something they call proof of work. And basically, in Bitcoin, and this is where Satoshi Nakamoto, this is called more or less Nakamoto consensus. This is like, he was the one that suggested this specific solution to this problem, this Byzantine generals problem. And the way it more or less solves it is saying, okay, we have many nodes in the network that need to agree on one state of the blockchain. We want to make sure that we can sustain a part of the people in the network, or in the general situation, a part of the generals not being honest. So we want to be able to deal with this because we know how the world works. We know that there is a chance that, say, 2/3 of the generals are not going to be honest. And then we still need to be able to move forward, right? So we don't want to wait for them, because this is, you could technically say, sure, all the generals just wait until they know exactly sure what everyone thinks, you know, and you can imagine some scenario where that's possible. But yeah, but that doesn't work, because then you're extremely slow. If there's one or two bad actors, then you'll never figure it out. So what he kind of figured is, you have to imagine, if it's really costly for you in the general situation, if it's really costly for you to get to an agreement with the rest, and there is an extremely high chance that if you're a bad actor, if you're a bad general, that you will lose your whole investment. So it's more or less, all these generals, they have to spend like a year before they can actually attack the city. They have to spend time and time and time on solving a problem, because only if they solve this particular problem, they're actually allowed to even participate in the war. But they all want to do, you know, they all want to participate in the war because they all have their own reasons to want to conquer Rome. Exactly. Right. So if you imagine that you're one of these generals and you get the option, okay, I'm going to invest a huge amount of time to try and participate in this war, and you also have to do this within 1 year. But the problem is so big, and you cannot coordinate with all the generals to be bad actors within that year. So you're like, okay, I can invest this time in solving this problem and then attacking Rome. And we know that we more or less all have this goal. There might be a couple of bad actors here, but to even participate, to even, you know, make me consider their attack plan in the future, they need to also solve this problem for 1 year. Well, then what is more or less the likelihood that these guys are going to invest 1 year into solving that problem, not knowing that the rest might, is probably an honest actor, because that's kind of what we assume, right? Most of them really want to and will attack Rome. The likelihood that they'll invest all of this time and money to actually do the bad thing, knowing that if they are not the majority, they'll lose anyways. Yeah. So they're still fucked. So then you know, the likelihood of this is very, 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 very decreased. And this is kind of how Bitcoin works as well. So they do a proof of work, because before these generals can go into the war, they need to prove that they have done that 1 year of work. Well, in the blockchain and Bitcoin world, specifically Bitcoin, it takes 10 minutes. And they have to guess a number. And it's extremely difficult to guess this number. But once the number is guessed, it's extremely easy to verify that it's the correct number, right? So you have to imagine there's like thousands of nodes in this network. They're all working on guessing this number. A good point, sorry. A node is it's just one device. It's a computer that is owned by someone, and this person decides to run Bitcoin on this node.
And they're all trying to guess this number.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what happens is I do a transaction and I announce to everyone, hey, I did a transaction. And slowly all the people in this network, they say, oh, okay, cool. You did a transaction. I'm going to save this. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to squash all these transactions together and I'm going to push this out to the network. But before I do, I'm going to try and see if I can solve this problem, right? Because if I solve this problem, I get what I want. In the case of the general situation, it's that they can conquer Rome. And in the case of Bitcoin, it's that they get Bitcoin, you know, because they solve this problem, they are rewarded with Bitcoin itself. Well, everyone wants Bitcoin. I hope. Okay. So you have to imagine that when all of these people solve this problem, and it takes a lot of energy and power, the incentives, like the motivations for people in the network, are not such that it is very likely that they will do something bad, because that will make them lose all the energy, the power in the computer world, and also the hardware that they have to buy this is greatly diminished the value that they get for it. If they participate in a proper way, so they collaborate with the rest, they can actually get Bitcoin, right? So, and this is kind of how it works. And there's a lot of, like specifics to this whole protocol, because there's a lot of reasonable questions you can ask, like how does it work in this, in this scenario, and there's a lot of those, and they were all considered. And we can go into that also later, because then we can do an episode specifically on these consensus protocols. But this is more or less the basics.
Yeah. Okay. So
does that make sense so far?
Yeah, I think it's good to elaborate more in a separate episode, that we can also maybe touch upon the other proof of stake, those kinds of concepts, or maybe later in this episode even. But I think it makes sense. So everyone in the network is kind of incentivized to solve this problem in a truthful way, right? And to not. Okay. So how much do you need to be able to corrupt the network?
That's a good point. So it differs per consensus protocol. So this does not apply for every blockchain. But we have this notion in the Bitcoin world of the 51% attack. Right. So that means that if 51% of the network agrees on maybe something that's not actually true, then the rest of the network will think that it's actually true, even though we all know as outsiders that it's not. And this is a problem. So if 51% makes a decision that is not actually true, then from that point on, it's actually the truth.
Okay, so just from my understanding, 51% of the whole network has to be corrupted in order to let this new truth be the truth. So I need to have a substantial amount of the network in order to can change it. So that's why the chance is so low that it will actually be corrupted.
Right, because you have to imagine, we know what a Bitcoin is worth right now. And you have to imagine that, so it's not easy to get rich off mining, right? So this is mining, like trying to solve this problem and buying hardware for it. It's not easy to get rich off of this, because if it were, then the world this whole situation would not work. So people have to buy all the computers, and they have to buy the electricity and all of that. So you have to imagine the amount of sheer money that you need to get to 51% of all of this, because these devices are not, like your laptop. They're really, really expensive and optimized devices, and they're hard to get. To get this is extremely difficult.
So the baseline here, I think the message is it's hyper secure.
Yeah, you can. I think importantly we have to compare it with the world right now, and we'll get into banks. It's mostly different. When you look at a bank, if I kidnap the director of a bank, or maybe I kidnap the whole board, I don't know, and I want them to change transactions, probably I can get it done. I can, in some way, I can give myself a lot of money if I do this the right way, or I hack them, right? Or I hack a few people. Well, we all know that there's still a risk in the Bitcoin world, and we know that this risk I just postulated is one in the banking world. But in the Bitcoin world, hacking a few people will never be enough. Kidnapping a few people will never be enough.
Because you need to hack 51% of everyone.
Exactly. And that's going to be hard. That's going to be really, really hard.
So that's why it's such an upgrade in security, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Okay.
You have to imagine that you have to kind of hack half of the whole bank's employee list to get anything done.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, makes sense so far. It sounds very logical. Makes perfect sense. We are talking also about Bitcoin a bit right now. I want to go into that in a bit, but this concept, right now we're talking about banks, financial institutions. This blockchain, does it only work for banks or for finance, or can it also work for other applications? Because you just said BitTorrent, that's a different application than finance. Why is everyone right now talking about finance?
That's a good point. Well, I mean, BitTorrent is not necessarily a blockchain, right? Because we don't have this thing of consensus, and we don't have this whole mining thing and all of that. But there's still a blockchain. It's like a chain of things. it's definitely not necessary that we only have this in finance. I think one of the reasons we're talking about in terms of finance is just because that's kind of how it was introduced into the media. Like most people know Bitcoin, and the mission of Bitcoin, and we'll get into, also the economical and more philosophical aspects of it. The mission of Bitcoin is, I would say, quite financial. It's very financial, actually. But if you look at the mission of some other blockchains that use similar or maybe even, slightly changed or improved technology, that's definitely not limited to financials, not at all, actually. I mean, you have to imagine there's chains that create power sharing networks. So imagine you have solar panels on your roof, and you want to be able to share the energy that you have, but do small transactions also to sell that to other people or borrow energy from them. This is exactly what a blockchain could be really useful for, to automatically do really small transactions with devices that are just, somewhere in your house.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
You have this. It's called Power Ledger, and there's also Ocean. So we all. I mean, definitely nowadays, we are the product. In many services, that's what people say. So I use Facebook, but I don't pay for Facebook. Why not? It's because they use my data. And
you're being sold to advertisers.
Exactly, I'm being sold, more or less. So, I mean, I think that sucks. I think it's dishonest, and that's a personal opinion. There is also a solution for this, and a blockchain can really play a big role in this. It's in making sure that the data that I generate is actually shared on a network, and I get paid for the data that I supply to the network. And then people can do analysis on this data, but I'm actually getting paid. So it's not the company that gets paid, but it's actually me, because I'm the one.
Yeah.
In the Facebook sense, you just pay for the fact that you can be part of this network, and I think that's kind of dishonest.
I want to dive into specific projects later on, but for now, sure. I think it's good to understand that the way I right now understand it, as you just described, is that blockchain is the technology that's below everything. That is the fundamental technology, perhaps like the internet, and Bitcoin and these other projects. They are applications on this technology. So if I can draw an analogy, blockchain is the internet and Bitcoin is like email. It uses the internet and it makes use of the technology that's being presented. Can I say it like that?
Yeah, I think you can. That's a good, I mean, honestly, email is a little bit broken, if you ask me, but you're right. Like it's built on top of this set of technologies and protocols.
All right.
Okay. And you can be flexible. You have to imagine it's an empty canvas, what you can build with this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's important for us to highlight right now, because for people to understand this, it's so new, and it has become so famous in just a few years. They have to get all these concepts. They have to see that blockchain is something different than Bitcoin. Like, for instance, when I talk to my dad about this, he wants to understand it, but he has to research a lot of topics that are new to him. So we have to make a clear distinction. Okay, blockchain is the technology, and with this technology, you can do a lot of cool stuff.
So I think it's important to note that when I explain this to my mom, for example, I might explain the whole Byzantine generals problem and all of this. But what it really comes down to is, like you say, we have this technology, and it's at the basis of a lot of really awesome stuff that we can do. And we like the internet, we see now, oh, damn, we can do really, really interesting stuff with it. And I think we have to just name what the advantages are. So we have to so what a blockchain, what's the actual advantage for me as a normal person? It's the fact that what you generate, if you're participating in the network, what you generate is something that you individually can actually be rewarded for, and you are the owner of what you put on the network, and it's traceable, so it's visible to everyone where your information is at all times, and you have a substantial amount of control. And central institutions, as we know, they're not necessarily bad. Some of them are, but they're not necessarily bad. But they make mistakes and things go wrong. And we know that we as humans are amazing. We're extremely creative. What we're not so great at is the systematic security of information and stuff like this. I mean, I lose stuff all the time, and you wouldn't want to trust that to a group of people. We can do better than that. We have already solutions to solve these things. So why not use them? Why not build what we are actually good at as human beings? You know, creation, sharing, connection, and love, and all of these things. And I think this is really where we should use technology for, is to solve our own, you know, problems.
Yeah, fully agreed. Beautifully said. What I want to go into now is Bitcoin, because we have talked a lot about the technology. I think that the basis is clear. I think we have a good way to start from here. You already mentioned a few terms just now that I think we absolutely need to touch upon. You named the name Satoshi Nakamoto. I think we have to elaborate who this guy is. You named mining. I'm not sure if you said hashing, but I heard some terms in there that I think we need to elaborate on. So, okay, now that we know what blockchain is, what is Bitcoin exactly?
Right. So let's start a little bit, like, you know, story mode here. We have a guy or girl, we don't know, and this person is really, he's passionate about solving the problems that we just addressed, and he's a coder. He does all of this research and he comes up with this idea, exactly what we just described, and decides to just write it. Starts being active on the internet, mailing lists, forums, sharing his idea, actually working on coding it, and releases a paper, 2008. And there's already people in touch with him working on this piece of software, and this is Bitcoin. And still, by the point that the paper is released and, you know, software is being created and it's been run a couple of times, no one knows who this person actually is. And by now, this person goes by the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, and we still don't know who he or she is. Maybe it was a group of people. That's also an important thing to note. And in 2008, when they released this paper, it started quite slowly. And you can also still read on public forums, you know, this person or this group of people sending all kinds of messages about their considerations for the network and what to do and what not to do with it and such and such. And after a while, you can imagine that if people run this piece of software that we just described, I mean, Bitcoin wasn't worth anything at that point. It was literally just, you know, a hobby project, something like this. It was not. At that time, mining was ridiculously cheap. So now it's expensive. But as more people join the network, this is where Bitcoin has a solution built in. As more people join,
hang on, just one second.
Mining becomes more complicated.
What is mining?
Right. Yeah. I'm going to. Yeah, that's a good point. So let me introduce mining right before we go even deeper into the story. That's a good point, Niels. Mining is you using hardware and electricity in this point to solve that problem that we just described, to participate in the network. And if you're right in solving this problem and you're the first one, then you get a reward for this. And this reward is Bitcoin. And the reason that they call it mining is what you can imagine is we have this pool of Bitcoin, right? So just, you know, imagine back in the day we had gold. They have this pool of gold. And, you know, how do we get more gold? Because we all know that gold's worth something. So we go into the mine, I mean, we mine gold. And then what we come back with is the real deal. And this slowly increases the pile of gold that we have available. Well, this is more or less it. You know, before you can add something to the pool, you need to have to put the work in of mining, because this is what makes it scarce.
So instead of actually going into the mine and I'm mining gold, right now I buy a device and I use this device. I power it with electricity, and this device is solving this mathematical problem. And if I get it correctly, then I earn Bitcoin for solving that problem.
Yeah, that's actually right. Completely right.
And can I just buy a device like this? How does this work?
Yeah, you can buy a device like this. It will cost you quite some money, and there have been periods, or there are periods right now as well, where it could be challenging to get the right devices, because they are called something you call, and you can forget this term immediately, but they're called ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits. And these are the devices that you need. So they're way more specialized than a normal laptop because they are only made to solve one problem, application specific.
Just to put in context, right now you have things called mining farms, and there are whole villages in, I think, Iceland and China that are like all the buildings there consist of these devices, and there are millions of it, and they are gathering like the electricity of like a small country. I read some blogs. So we should put it in context that like a lot of people in the world right now, they want Bitcoin. They are mining Bitcoin and they're paying a lot of fees for electricity for that, right?
Yes. Yeah. 2 points to mention there is people tend to say like, yeah, it uses the electricity of a small country, and that's true. But if we compare this to other industries, also the banking industry, what they use in terms of power, Bitcoin uses not even nearly in terms of the emission. Bitcoin is not even close to the impact on the environment compared to the banks and other.
Just to hook in from my side, it was not an attack on Bitcoin, but it was more to show that this is not something that right now you can just buy a device on your desk and you can mine some Bitcoin. You can probably still do that with some devices, but the demand for this is huge at this point, and that we actually have like whole villages like trying to get Bitcoin. So people really believe in this stuff. It's not something that's fabricated, like just people actually want to have this.
The second point I wanted to make is, I mean, the amount of Bitcoin like in circulation, because we know that you get Bitcoin if you mine, right? So we touched upon that. But where you get the Bitcoin from is actually, and this is why it's called mining, it's created. Like when you solve this problem, there's new Bitcoin added to the pool or pile of Bitcoins that are in circulation. But the amount of Bitcoin you get, so the pool of Bitcoin like goes up, right? But the amount of Bitcoin you get when you solve the problem over time, like over the years, is also slowly decreasing. So every 4 years-ish, it's happening. You don't have as much of something that people want. What happens? It gets worth more. People want to pay more to get it. And this is, I think, one of the motivations for many people to hold or mine Bitcoin. Is if you hold on to this over the years, because the amount that people get from mining is less, more people start to adopt Bitcoin. We can imagine that, okay, so more people want Bitcoin, but less people get Bitcoin. What will happen? Bitcoin will increase in value. And this is definitely not something that I think is 100% certain. Of course not. But theoretically, if things keep on going like this is kind of where it's headed, I think.
All right. So I try to wrap my head around this to understand it correctly. If it means that the amount of Bitcoin that you get for solving this problem is halved every 4 years, it means that in the end there is a finite supply of Bitcoin, and that this makes it extremely scarce. And maybe that's one of the key concepts there. Is that correct?
I can see you're not a real golden retriever, but you know your stuff. But you're right. Yeah, exactly. 21 million is the exact amount. Eventually they'll stop, and there will be 21 million Bitcoin exactly, and that's it.
That's it. No more, no less.
No more, no less.
Just to dive a bit deeper, it's not that I can only buy one Bitcoin, right?
Oh no, man! You can buy something up to the point that you can buy a Satoshi.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is that this maybe ties to my next question, like what you do with BUX Crypto. Many people that are new to the scene right now, they ask me like, "Hey, where do I buy a Bitcoin, or where do I buy 2 Bitcoins?" Like friends or my dad, and I'm like, you can buy 2 Bitcoins, of course, but that's right now worth $20,000 approximately, or even more at this point. But you don't have to buy per Bitcoin. You can also buy just a small amount, like 0.05 Bitcoin. And I think that's for us, it's quite clear that that's how it works. But a lot of new people, they probably don't know that.
Yeah, good point. You can technically buy the amount of Bitcoin similar to what you would pay for a cup of coffee, a couple of euros.
Okay. To summarize a bit here, that this sounds like a very powerful technology, because you have like a finite supply of coins that people they want this more and more over time, which makes it
Mm-hmm.
actually, it sounds like sound money to me. It sounds really good.
What is sound money?
Well, it sounds like money that cannot be influenced by government per se. Let's say that the Federal Reserve in America right now, they are printing massive amounts of money, which will lead to massive inflation, which will, of course, decrease your purchasing power.
Yeah.
So the all the components in here, they sound pretty good to me. But like, I just want to be more pragmatic. Like, okay, so if I want a Bitcoin, how can I get this? Can I just go to your website, BUX Crypto, and buy some Bitcoin? Like, how does this process work?
Yeah, you can go to getbuxcrypto.com and buy your Bitcoin there. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. I mean, I do it myself as well, so you can
This
also use it.
episode is sponsored by BUX Crypto.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Fortunately, it's not. But so yeah, you could go to a lot of websites actually, of which BUX Crypto is one of them. You log in there and you buy your Bitcoin. You have to do identity verification because there is already some regulations coming up. We can touch upon the regulations in another episode. I think it's important for many people to
Sure.
know that they associate it with like black market, but that's not really the case anymore. I mean, let's face it, there's always bad people involved in things, and we also have that with the current system of money. But in terms of Bitcoin, things are being checked. We do quite thorough identity verification, and when you do, for example, transactions that are above a certain amount, or you withdraw too many times a day, we just block your wallet for a second, and we send you an email like, hey, we just want some extra information because this doesn't really seem right to us. You know, we don't want money laundering in there. This is just really for people that want to do something purposeful with Bitcoin in a good fashion. And I think most of the companies, especially in the European Union, there's more regulation upcoming. It's going that way. You know, it's getting more mainstream in a good way.
Oh, all right, because like back in the day, like I'm not from the complete beginning I was into Bitcoin, but when I started to buy my first Bitcoin, this
Right.
wasn't like a very how do you say, easy process in order to get some. Right now, I think it's way easier, right? I can just like with a bank transaction, I can buy some.
Oh man, yeah, of course. I mean, in the OG Bitcoin times, basically, it was really difficult because you had no exchanges. You had like a small network. You know, there was this tight kind of click going on. But nowadays, I mean, it's super mainstream. You can get it anywhere. It's quite normal. You can literally pay for food and whatnot with Bitcoin. It's really it's quite easy nowadays. Yeah, and we try to do this as BUX Crypto.
Yeah. So one more practical point is that let's say I go to your website, I buy some Bitcoin, I just make a bank transfer of like, let's say $100, then I
Mhm.
get 0.01 Bitcoin or something, and this will then be stored on your exchange, or how does this work?
Yeah, in our case, it will be stored with us.
Yeah.
We generally do advise people to try and store it themselves if you can. There's a couple of solutions out there for people to store it themselves. There's this concept of a hardware wallet. It's a hardware wallet is more or less it's you have to imagine like a USB stick, and on it there is your wallet. And maybe we should also explain a bit what a wallet actually is, because
Yeah, I think that's a good
should
plan.
I? I think
Yeah,
yeah.
should.
So, all right. When we talk about a wallet, nowadays we imagine, I don't know, this letter thing where we just put our cash in. Well, that's absolutely not what Bitcoin does. What Bitcoin does is you create your own address, and you're the only person that can generate transactions from this address. And the way you do that is by something we call a private key. We can dive into what exactly that is also in another episode. But it more or less comes down to it's private. So you're the only one that actually can use it. And the Bitcoin network more or less verifies cryptographically that you are actually the owner of the wallet whenever you do a transaction. So it's really impossible for you to use someone else's private key because you don't know, and it's extremely difficult to find it out. It's a very, very long string of characters. So This is more or less what a wallet is. It's just an address that transactions are being sent to, and you can generate as many as you want. And this is kind of where it comes in. It's like when you buy Bitcoin at BUX Crypto, you're deposited to us. We store it for you, but you can still send it to your own address. And then you own the private key for that address instead of us. Because for us to send it to you, of course, we do need some ownership. We need the private key basically to actually send it to you and to buy it for you. So we deliver the service, but we say, when you have a lot of Bitcoin, please don't store it at us, because we are a target. Many exchanges are targeted. There has been a history of exchanges being hacked. We've never been hacked, but these risks are out there. And in my day-to-day job, I see that we are getting attacked as well. We're a juicy target because people know that you have crypto. And as we just discussed, when it's gone, it's gone. You cannot turn back a transaction, which might be possible in the banking world. And there's a lot of regulation and controls in place. And this is not the case in the crypto world. So you have to be really secure with what you do.
Okay, so it's a little bit like cash money. If you lose it on the street, it's just gone.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Right. And just for my understanding, so you have this wallet online on your exchange, but you can also have this hardware wallet, like you just described, a USB stick, where I can put my Bitcoin or crypto coins on. And this hardware wallet, I have the full responsibility then to just keep it safe, right? Like cash. Okay, so the best practice there would be to have this hardware wallet and to put it in a vault or something.
Yeah, probably something along these lines. It depends on, depends on how much you put on there. There's a couple of options. What I would recommend is to also make backups, secure backups. There's options also to split your key over multiple people, so that not one person can sign transactions, but you need the agreement of multiple. And this helps quite a lot, of course, especially when you talk about a lot of money and you have a couple of people that you trust. And they still need you to actually do anything. But if you lose your piece, or your piece gets stolen more or less, then you're not at risk. You still want to make sure that you don't lose your piece, of course, because if you do, it would still be impossible to sign transactions. So there's a lot of complications there, and people are working very, very hard to make this easier. And I think we're getting there. It will take a little bit of extra time, because it's a hard problem to solve, but people are working on it and we will solve it. So
yeah, because for mainstream adoption to take place, of course, it's very important that the usability aspect of this Bitcoin concept, it's very easy, right? The mainstream has to use it. So yeah, all these problems, they need to be tackled, and it's getting easier every year. But still, I think there's a certain threshold of like of knowledge you need to have, of like things you need to do, stuff you need to buy, and all these actions that are not quite, just you have to really dive into this.
Still. Yeah, that's unfortunate. It would be great if it would be even simpler, but that's kind of how it works. Like once everyone understands it, like once everyone knows, then also the price will go up. So that I think that's kind of like the first mover advantage, or like early mover advantage. Because usually what happens as adoption grows, the price goes up because more people want it and there's not enough available. So
okay, makes sense. Okay, so far we're an hour in. I'm trying to understand all this new stuff that's heading my way.
You're doing great.
Yeah, the retriever mindset. One question I really have with all this when listening to this, this sounds cool and it sounds very intriguing, but why do all these people like want to have Bitcoin, and why should I want to have Bitcoin? Like, what is the motive for someone to want this?
Wow, what's the meaning of life, Niels? What I mean, it depends per person, right? So I think for Bitcoin specifically, it comes down to the fact that, okay, so I approach it, but I want to actually know your reason, because you just like step out of the golden retriever mindset for a bit and tell me why you believe in this, because I know you do. I know. And just so my reason personally that I believe in this is, I mean, I'm in technology, right? And I see that we as human beings we're amazing. I have a lot of like appreciation for the fact that, for the world and for nature. But I do see in daily life that we are focusing a lot of energy and time on systems that had their reason to be there. But the reason for them to be there as we evolve, as we create new solutions, is diminishing. Like there's less reason for them to be there because they're not solving a real problem anymore. We already have better solutions. And I think looking and investing and putting our time and effort into the technologies, for example, technologies or mindsets that can help us get there, will and can improve the world in really tremendous ways. And I'm not saying that we should destroy the old system, but I think, the natural state of the world is that things are constantly changing. Just put a stoic thing in there. Things are constantly changing, and we should embrace this. And the current economical system has shown us that it can do certain things really, really well, and that it is quite bad at other things. And I think, for example, the size of the Forex market, like the foreign exchange, the differences between currencies, for example, it's a huge market. The amount of people that work in this market and the size, if you would have to express the size of this market in for example, euro dollar, it's, if you look at a farmer or someone that builds anything really, they are producing something that other people can use. When we're talking about just simply trading, there's not really a lot of things being produced. It's just to gain more money. And I think those things have made their sense, in getting to globalization and all this. But now we don't need this anymore. We can get into a system where people have more autonomy, where people make their money for what they're actually worth, for their own data, for their own micro actions, etc. And we can use technology to help us here and focus on what really matters, because we have really big problems to face in terms of nature. In terms of where this world, like the Earth itself, is going, and that's where our attention should go. That's my belief.
Yeah, I am fully in line with that, to be honest. I love that you of course, as a let's say developer / engineer, you are taking the perspective of why the world needs this from a technical perspective, because I also agree with that. In my mind, it's clear that this is a superior technology or system that from the one that we currently have. So from a upgrade humanity kind of perspective, I'm really down to go this route, and I really think that it holds a lot of power to address all the topics you just mentioned. But also, I think it's a very interesting perspective to take, the reason why a lot of people right now are hedging towards Bitcoin, because the current system is clearly failing. It's clearly on its end, or we are heading to a major crisis that is upon us, I think. And I think one of the reasons why people are also buying gold is the same reason. Like, a lot of people right now are buying Bitcoin. They are trying to protect their wealth. They're trying to find hedges from the current monetary system in order to realize a better future for themselves. And what I see right now is that I think on a global scale, people are trying to see that, hey, this Bitcoin concept, it's actually the same as gold used to be, but it's an upgraded version of that. It's not the golden standard anymore, but it's the Bitcoin standard, and that's the aim we should have as a species right now. And this will not only deliver all the great things, it's actually creating something without only focusing on making money or earning money, but yeah, this will also lead to the enhancement of individual freedom, in my perspective. I just listened to a podcast that I forgot the name, I will link in the show notes, that it's a libertarian thinker, and he said Bitcoin is the answer for libertarianism. And when that clicked with me, yes, this is the case. So I think we both are very libertarian thinkers in a certain regard. Yeah. This is the way. I truly think this is the way to get there. This is the tool in order to get more free as individuals. And yeah, all those things combined, and then not even talking about the investment opportunities, like that's even another thing. All these things combined make it such an crazy interesting concept for me to think about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the fact that, you can think about these concepts, when they're still in their very, very early phase, and people can say like, well, yeah, okay, great, it's a great idea, but it's an early phase. But this is already happening. There's so much already going on there, and I mean, so the Bitcoin standard is a really interesting take for those that are interested. If you want to get more like the economical history, I think what you're referring to is the book, The Bitcoin Standard, which is named after the gold standard, and it explains exactly the reasons why we should look at something like this, and it goes also into some economical theory about the impossible trinity, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really interesting stuff, and it's well written. But yeah, man, I totally agree. I think that we should explore these things, and we shouldn't be held back. Like there is improvement out there, and it will take work. But I always believe you choose your problems, and also as a humanity we do. By not acting, we still have problems. So it's more like what leaves the least amount of waste, and I think in this case we can reduce waste by going for technologies that optimize, because that's kind of the idea of optimization, right? Reducing waste. So yeah, I'm fully with you, unfortunately, because it would have been an interesting discussion if I like substantially disagree and like show it in my microphone.
I think in the future we should do some podcasts about things we absolutely disagree about. Maybe some politics stuff, but maybe when we're a bit further developed, and we feel free to do that.
And when we have a beer in our hand, I think.
Yeah, sure. We should definitely do that. Okay, for this episode, I'm thinking what I want to do, because I think that we touched upon a lot already. I'm not sure if we want to go into Ethereum this episode, because knowing us, this is already like, we already dropped a lot of information on people, and this will take at least half an hour more in order to touch upon all those concepts that are of importance for Ethereum. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest to do a separate episode about that, and to finish right now to end with some positive, like fun stuff, the top projects in the whole blockchain scene that you think are really promising. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I love the idea. I think Ethereum on its own, especially considering it's going quite crazy lately in terms of the amount of activity there. It's really cool and a good idea to go into exactly what Ethereum is and why and all that in a separate episode. And let's get let's drop the seriousness of like what is the blockchain and go futuristic on this stuff. So dropping the golden retriever mindset, because it makes me feel very, very smart when you act like you don't know anything. But so let's go into like us being
not acting,
really
bro.
into crypto and all that. Yeah. So you really are a golden retriever. Wow. So that's your spirit animal. What is a crypto project, besides Bitcoin, of course, that you really believe in?
All right, good question. I think as an introduction there, I think I have to call myself I don't want to call myself a Bitcoin maximalist, but I think it's good to name this term, because
you can put it out there.
Yeah, let's say a Bitcoin maximalist is someone that believes that Bitcoin is the ultimate crypto, and everything in the end will, it will flow to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is as Willem Middelkoop, a Dutch economist / thinker, trader, I don't know, he calls it the nucleus of crypto. That Bitcoin is the sun, and everything, it goes around Bitcoin. And this will always be the case. Bitcoin will be the thing that will always be the biggest player within the scene. I'm not sure if. Yeah, me too. I really liked it. I'm not sure if this is the case, that this will always be the case, but I do think that right now I would call myself like, let's say, a Bitcoin maximalist light, in the sense that I think it will stay Bitcoin for a while. And there are a lot of cool projects going on right now, but it will take, in my view, decades for them to really like unleash their full potential. So my main go-to is Bitcoin. But having said that, there is of course a lot of cool stuff. One of my favorite projects right now, it's called the Basic Attention Token. As you know, I am in digital marketing, and you touched earlier in this episode on the points about Facebook and Google, that you are the product. You as a consumer are the product, and they are selling your data to advertisers. And for me, this is a very profitable business, of course. But when I look deep down inside, I feel that this is not a system in which I truly want to live. I don't think it should be like this. So I think we should we should grow towards a system in which privacy is way more valued. And what Basic Attention Token does is they have actually made a web browser called the Brave browser, and you are getting paid in their tokens, in their Brave token, or Basic Attention tokens for viewing advertisement. And this way, the dynamic gets changed. So you are not the product anymore. You are the consumer of ads, and you get paid for watching certain ads. And I love this concept, and I love the fact that it's already working right now. You can actually download this browser, and you can get paid in these tokens. For Westerners, it may not be a big amount of money, maybe $5 a month or something. But for third world countries, this is, of course, it's a tremendous upgrade in their behavior and income. I think it's amazing that this is what crypto is allowing us to do. Yeah. So I would say that's my favorite project right now. I have a few more, but I'm curious to see what you have to put on the table.
Right. I mean, yeah, BAT is definitely one of the projects that I also really think has potential. Next to the fact that, so BAT's already been out there for a while, right? But then when they started, there were so many, like, we should also touch upon what an ICO is. I'll do that just right now, because we did one as being Blockport, and we're now BUX Crypto. But there, at the time that BAT was created, and around this time, there were a lot of people setting up ideas and projects, writing, like websites and papers, and suggesting the ideas to people that were early adopters of crypto, and then saying like, hey, I have this awesome idea. I think it's going to take over the world. I wrote this paper about it. Read the paper if you want. On that day, like, I don't know, 2 months from now, on that time, you can buy my own token, for example, the Niels token. And you can buy this for €1 per token. And there's a total of 1 million tokens. And what I want to do is create this product with that money. And if this product's going to succeed, that token that you bought is going to be worth more than €1. So you'll probably end up making money off it. And if you also believe in the idea, go for it, buy my token. So this is more or less what an ICO is. It's the crypto equivalent of an IPO, which is an initial product offering. And in the crypto sense, it's an initial coin offering. And at that time, there were many projects when BAT was created. There were so many projects that did ICOs, also more after BAT. And I think many of them didn't actually create a really, an actual product. Like they were not really creating anything that was being used. I mean, the quality was, all over the place, but there were also really many projects that literally did not create anything. And BAT was one of those that actually quite early on created something that, worked. They created the Brave browser, and they actually did something. The whole thing has been running, and they're still adding stuff on top of it. And I think that's a really interesting and important point to note here, to underline why we probably believe in it, because I believe in the team. Funny enough, the creator of BAT is also the creator of a programming language called JavaScript that definitely runs in everyone's device, because whenever you browse, you'll use that language. So it's quite cool, the people behind it. So next to BAT, what I believe in, I just want to touch upon one project and then one general idea that many projects kind of come together in. So one project that I believe in a lot is Cosmos. And the reason for this is, so we spoke about this whole Byzantine generals problem, right? Like So you have a couple of generals and they want to attack a city and they need to align, and it's quite hard to get them aligned. So there's a couple of like protocols or algorithms to solve this problem. And one of them is what is implemented in Bitcoin, which is Nakamoto consensus. But we also have another implementation to be what they call Byzantine fault tolerant. And fault tolerant is literally to deal with faults in the system where, for example, 2 generals are bad. That's a fault. So you're tolerant of the fault that 2 generals are bad. That's called BFT, Byzantine fault tolerant. And there was this guy, Jay Kwan, and together with Ethan Buchman, they work on this right now. It's called Tendermint, and they wrote this piece of software that solved this problem as well based on already existing research. And they basically split the whole thing up in 2. So they said, you know, on the one hand, we want to have this whole algorithm you said, all the protocols and all the complexities in there and whatnot. But we also want to have an application layer. So this layer of, you know, stuff you can actually do with it, stuff you can build on it. For example, email. So they created 2 projects. One of them Tendermint, one of them is Cosmos. And Cosmos is built on top of Tendermint. So it has this whole algorithmic, you know, lower level stuff in there. But Tendermint can also be used by others. And when you use Tendermint, you're automatically integrated with Cosmos. You're automatically integrated with many other projects. And I see this working already in real life. There's a really big cryptocurrency exchange that many people that know a little bit about crypto have heard of, and that's Binance. And Binance has their own token, and the Binance token is built on top of Tendermint. So this is this for me was back in the day when they created the token was a big reason to see like, wow, you know, this is getting adopted. This stuff really works. It's good software. And they are really active in the community. They've done an ICO back in the day, and they are actually creating a lot of value. And Cosmos itself is a token for the network. And I think it's a really great idea because what they want to do is they want to create an internet of blockchains. So they want to hook everything together, and they want to make sure that, you know, just to kind of get the idea around, when you use Brave, you get some BAT, right? Well, imagine you can also use that BAT immediately to do something completely different. For example, you know, watch some private content of someone. Instead of having to exchange your BAT for some other random token, these things could technically go automatically. But then to do that, you actually need to have these 2 blockchains communicate with each other, right? And this is something they can solve, and they connect everything together. And they do this because they've built this super awesome lower level technology that can do that. So that's one. Does it make sense? I think you also know the project a little bit already, right?
I do.
Right.
But it makes sense. I can follow.
Cool. So and then we have, I mean, AI. That's my second thing. There's 2 really important aspects to like developing AI to help us. And I think there's also some ethical reasons why we should consider blockchain for this. Okay, so we have data on the one hand, you know, so to build proper AI, we need a lot of data. And I mean, it's great that we have a lot of data, but to actually do anything with the data, we need to process it. So we need a lot of what we call compute. We need a lot of processing power. And with there's now this technology called they're neural networks, or rather deep learning. And we definitely don't have to go into what it exactly is, but what I want to mention is that 30 years ago, we already knew what neural networks were, and we already knew what deep learning was, but it never became big. And that's because we didn't have the data and we didn't have the compute. So we couldn't actually do anything with it. But by now we have, like Google and Facebook, they have so much data, and we have hardware that is so much more faster than what we had 30 years ago, that suddenly these companies are gaining a lot of power, like a lot. And when they actually are capable of building AI, they're the owner. And I think this is risky. I think in general, what we should try to do is we should make sure that the data and the compute is in the public domain, you know, so it's something that everyone can access freely, and that the products built on top of it, yes, of course, those might be offered by Google and Facebook, but they should not own your data, they should not be able to do all the compute that they want whenever they want, and to not share this with others, because then you get competition, I think, on the wrong things, because then we're still the product, right? So we want to get away from this. Well, so there's a project called Ocean Protocol, and they more or less solve the data problem. So they say, okay, you can provide your data to the rest of the world, and you get a reward for this, and that's a token. And there's actually already a real life application. Toyota realized that for them to build autonomous driving vehicles, so self-driving cars, for them to build this, they would need approximately 15 years to actually get the amount of data that they needed to get this done. So they were also like, okay, damn, that's not good. So what if we collaborate with others and share data that is being generated, and then try to collectively build a self-driving car? Well, this is exactly what I mean. The self-driving car is a huge advantage for people, but it shouldn't be the case. Another company, no, it should be owned by us, and we can offer it to them to use, right? That's fine. That's all good. So I think this is something that we should try to stimulate. And Ocean Protocol is already actively doing this with Toyota. They're supporting them in solving this problem. And then on top of that, we have the compute, right? So, I mean, to have the computing power, the server power, more or less, to process all the data, similarly is in the hands of a few companies. Well, what if we say we also democratize that, we decentralize this? So you can use a couple of devices that you have in your basement to run certain AI algorithms, or you're like a small startup that doesn't have a lot of data, but you have some really smart AI researchers, and you do have the money to buy a couple of servers, and you want to create a really awesome product. Well, you can use Ocean Protocol for the data, and then you can use something that is called SingularityNET, which is from Ben Goertzel, and they also collaborate already with Ocean Protocol. You can use SingularityNET to offer your computing, your AI algorithms, to the network, and then you can use the data from Ocean Protocol, compute it, and then share it again in the network, and you can get rewarded for the fact that you offer your AI services there. So it's like an AI marketplace. Well, how good is that? That's something we will probably develop towards, and this is where blockchain comes in. It cuts out the middleman, and you're the owner, and that's why I believe in these projects.
Wow. This synergy between projects, this really sounds fucking cool. This is epic.
Right?
This really excites me. The possibilities here are endless. And I think maybe we went a little bit too far for an introduction episode, but it's it's good to get maybe like a sneak peek into what this technology can offer. Maybe it's actually good that we did this, and we can dive into this way more deeply in separate episodes. But these are just a few like applications that this technology has to offer. So this is maybe also a good example why we are so excited about this, and why you actually made it your job.
Yeah, I mean, you invest like years in this, and it's because this vision, I believe, and I think you too, this is going to happen, and it's going to be really awesome. Like, the world's going to change for the better if we do this right. And the thing is, it's already happening, and we have the responsibility as humans to educate ourselves on this and to guide it into the right direction. Because this is also an important thing to note, I think, when we get a little bit more like philosophical. When there's innovation, there's always huge potential for evil as well. For example, with the creation of weapons, you can say, well, they can be used for a lot of evil things. But there's also always the argument that they can be used to defend yourself with, right? And I think it takes people with the right character to use the weapons only as a last resort, and to never use them to attack anyone. And it's the same if you're a good fighter. You should never use your skills to attack anyone, but you should be aware that you can defend yourself. And I think also when we have technology that is extremely powerful, we should realize that we as a human species have the responsibility to wield it, with care. It's like, this Spider-Man quote that's all over the place. With great power comes great responsibility. I mean, Uncle Ben was right. He was right.
I was laughing because now we really made a good connection with the first episodes about meaning and stoicism, and Jordan Peterson stuff. That it all fits together now. This is why you need to be a stoic when being a crypto CTO, I think.
Good point. Yeah. You hold responsibility.
Great. Hey, Zowie, I think we should wrap it up. I love this first talk. Really good. I hope at least that we have covered the basics in a understandable manner. I think we did a good job, but let the public decide. And yeah, I'm looking forward to in the future to do more about crypto, the more episodes about this, because for me this was kind of, you know, like I'm not a full golden retriever, but this was, you know, my current level of understanding. I know a bit more, but of course you are levels ahead of me, and I think it's an amazing opportunity for me also to learn from that, to see what you have to offer. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks
And
a lot, man.
looking forward, man.
Thanks a lot for the appreciation. I just want to add that I mean, I know that you're way beyond the golden retriever level, but I love talking with you about this stuff because we get this huge alignment, right? And I think that's also the reason we started this whole podcast, is that we have a belief system that is aligned with each other. I mean, let's, you know, like, listen to what people want to know, see what the feedback is, and create something amazing. And I really appreciate you for asking all the right questions, and to making sure that we get this in the right format, because it's awesome, and we have to share, you know, these ideas with people. It's beautiful.
Sweet. Let's do it.
All right,
man. See you in the next one.
Awesome. See you.
Ciao.